Help could be coming for Wisconsin dairy farmers. I'm Adrienne Pedersen, today on Upfront.
We're losing more than 2 dairy farms a day. And for each day we delay, the challenges will get harder and harder.
Governor Evers promises relief for struggling dairy farmers. Some Republicans say they're open to his ideas. The governor is here today, and I have a lot to ask him. Plus, his call to let the people make the maps. How hard will he push for changes in redistricting? And a look at how Chief Justice John Roberts is handling the impeachment trial, what he might have learned from Milwaukee native William Rehnquist.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with your host, Adrienne Pedersen.
The will of the people is the law of the land, and by golly, people should not take no for an answer.
Governor Evers announced his 2020 agenda in his State of the State speech. Today, we ask him how much he can realistically get done. Thank you for joining us. The governor called a special session for Tuesday to take up a series of bills he says will help Wisconsin farmers. He wants to spend $8.5 million over 2 years in a multi-pronged plan that will in part boost dairy exports and increase mental health services for farmers. But you may not see all the lawmakers on the floor Tuesday. The Speaker's office says they are more likely to gavel in than leave the session open for bills to proceed through hearings. So we're talking now with Democratic Governor Tony Evers. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks, Adrienne.
You now have the response from the Republicans in terms of what they would do with your special session. Are you satisfied with that?
Yes. I mean, I'd certainly rather have them get it done in one day, but from what I've heard Speaker Boss talking about is that he's going to gavel in, it's going to be sent to a committee. It would be sent to a committee anyway. I think the Senate is going to take it up, but I think we're in a good place. I think we'll get some of this legislation done and maybe some good bipartisan work.
And it does sound like it truly has bipartisan support. Republicans have said they're open to talking to you about this. The only real pushback I saw was from Speaker Voss, who said at one point a bunch more government programs and handouts. He wanted to make sure it wasn't that.
Yeah.
How do you fight that sort of concept that this will truly help farmers and not just spend more money?
Well, certainly $8.5 million is a relatively small investment for our farmers in the state of Wisconsin. It's not a handout. It's programs that will assist them in their work and assist them in expanding markets. So and I don't know if he still feels that way, but they aren't handouts, and it's a relatively small amount of money for an industry that brings in, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for the people of Wisconsin. So I think it's a minimal investment, frankly.
And I understand you're already talking to Republicans about this.
Sure, have and will continue. I know I have at least 1 or 2 calls tomorrow that I'll be having with Republicans. There's a lot of interest. People get it. We're the dairy state. It's on our license, and it's something that's important to the people of Wisconsin. And so I'm not surprised that there's bipartisan support, because a lot of legislators, a lot of Republican legislators represent rural areas of the state. Of course, agriculture isn't all just rural. There's some urban pieces to that too. But I think it's part of our DNA as a state. We're an agricultural state. There's lots of things that we can do better.
Redistricting is something that's getting a lot of attention. After your State of the State, you said you want a nonpartisan redistricting commission, people to draw what you call the people's map.
Right.
You've heard that Republicans say this is unconstitutional, and the Constitution says the legislature draws the maps.
Right.
So how do you fight their claim?
Well, it's not. We're not saying that the maps we draw are. Not we, this bipartisan commission or nonpartisan commission draw, are going to be the law of the land. What we're doing is giving people an opportunity to express their interest in this topic and help us draw truly nonpartisan maps. And we can suggest to the legislature. Of course, Republicans run both houses, and they did it 10 years ago, and we have gerrymandered maps. I'm anticipating that's going to happen again, but then the people of Wisconsin can take a look. This is what a gerrymandered map looks like that the legislature has passed. Here's what a nonpartisan group came up with. Which do you like? 70% of the people in the state wanted to have nonpartisan maps.
Well, you said you expect them to just draw them again. So is this more of a symbolic?
No,
or?
absolutely not. I mean, first of all, last time I checked, I have a chance to support or veto whatever they come up with, and if I decide to veto it, there's some other alternatives there for people to talk about. I think it's a good experiment in democracy, frankly.
I thought it was interesting that you didn't mention anything about gun laws in your State of the State address. Why not?
Well, I mentioned it once towards the end, and yeah, am I disappointed that we weren't able to get the legislature to at least have a conversation around that? Yeah, I am still concerned. I'm disappointed in that. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm willing to accept a vote that says, no, we don't want anything to do with this. If we have a vote, that's the thing that continues to bedevil me as governor, is that we have some important issues. I'm willing to say, let's put it to a vote to the Assembly and to the Senate, and we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. But at least people then know what their state representatives believe in. The same way with Medicaid expansion. There has been several things that I believe has at least some Republican support. Let's have a vote. Why does this have to be bottled up by leaders? I don't understand that. I understand the politics of it, but I don't understand how that advances our democracy and our state not to even take votes on things.
Do you think what happened with the gun special session is something that would get Republicans voted out of office potentially?
Possibly, or at least the people back home would know how they vote, how they feel about these issues. It's easy to sit back and say, and I've heard this, people say, well, you know, that's never going to come up, or that's never going to be brought to the floor. Well, why not? You know, elected officials should be held accountable for the votes they take, and if they don't take hard votes, how are we going to make judgments on whether they're meeting the people's expectations? I
want to talk to you a little bit about revenue, because this also just came out. The latest revenue estimates an additional $451.9 million. Mm-hmm. What do you want to do with that money? Well,
I think it's way too early to make any judgments as to exactly how much. Those are all projections. Clearly, I'm concerned about national economy and how that impacts our state. We don't know what the Foxconn bill is going to be. We won't know that until the summer. So there's so many unknowns. My level of interest right now is to make sure that we don't pay for one-time things that somehow next session we're going to have to find the money for. So I'm cautious, I'm conservative about waiting. That's what I think we should be doing.
In September, Senate Majority Leader and congressional candidate Scott Fitzgerald sat there saying he wants to get a tax cut through.
Right.
Are you open to that?
Well, that's a one-year deal. Where are we going to find the money to make that happen the next year and the next year and the next year? I think, you know, is that something that should be discussed? Absolutely, and I'm open to having discussions about that, but I'm not open to one-time expenditures of money that we know it's going to be an ongoing issue. We have lots of needs in this state, and I think having it just taken care of one point in time, people forget that, and we have to be cautious. I think conservative is a good way to look at it.
Okay, Governor, well, we need to take a quick break. We'll be back with you in a second. We have a few more things to talk about with Governor Evers. I'll ask him about the homework assignment that riled some Republican lawmakers, plus his plans for student loan debt. That's when Upfront continues.